Hi, Sweet as Honey listeners. Our sponsor is the Pickleball Headquarters Chicken and Pickle. Chicken and Pickle is your go-to destination for all things family friendly. Whether you're hitting the pickleball courts for some friendly competition, catching the big game with your friends, or enjoying brunch and yard games with your family, they have it all. Food, drinks, events, fun. Chicken and Pickle is the coolest backyard you'll never want to leave. Chicken and Pickle has locations nationwide and 2 right here in DFW. Text CNP Sweet as Honey to 43618 for a free shareable appetizer when you visit your nearest location.
Sweet as Honey podcast, season 2 with Nate Borunda.
Nice. Hey, Sweet as Honey fam. We're back at Formation at the Star, and we are so excited to be here. Make sure you check it out. We have a special guest on the podcast today, Nate Borunda, co-founding partner and executive director of Sports Academy. If you know me, you know I love Sports Academy, and I basically live there. So we're excited to have you on.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.
Yes. Have you ever been on a podcast?
Honestly, no.
Probably nothing like this, right?
No, nothing at all.
Wow.
This is definitely a first, so I feel very special.
Yes, welcome. Welcome. Give the audience a little background on you, who you are, what you do, all the good stuff.
Definitely. So I was born and raised in Southern California. Really was an athlete from birth, played all the different types of sports, and really felt like ultimately I wanted to figure out how I stayed in that career path, whether it be a coach or whether I'd just be a trainer. And so going through my development from youth all the way up through high school and eventually to college, I really gravitated to the sport of basketball. And so that's the one that I ended up sticking with. So played college basketball at an NAIA school out in Southern California, Master's College, which is in Santa Clarita. And really, after that point, didn't know what I wanted to get into and really kind of gravitated towards the training side of it. Once I knew that I wasn't good enough to play professional or go beyond what the NAIA rankings had given me. And so it really felt like it was an opportunity for me to stay close to the sport and be involved in the world of athletics.
Very cool. So how did you get into what you're doing now with Sports Academy? Yeah,
great question. Ultimately, I think it was two-pronged. One, I really didn't know what I wanted to do with my life, before the age of 20. And then after the age of 20, I still didn't fully know. But I really knew that I didn't want like a desk job. I wanted to kind of work with athletes. I wanted to influence people and I wanted to like help people. And so ultimately I had thought for a couple of weeks, like maybe I should be like a psychologist. Maybe I should like figure out how I can help people that way.
Yeah.
And then ultimately I was thought about it for a couple of weeks and I was like, no, that's not the right way. Ultimately, I want to be like hands-on. I want to be working in the trenches. I want to be a part of the experience of helping someone go from point A to point B. And ultimately that was like the driving factor behind going and pursuing my classical education in exercise science, kinesiology.
Nice. How did Sports Academy start?
Great question. So Sports Academy started in Southern California. So our CEO and founder and my partner and honestly my mentor, and the laundry list goes on and on of how much I owe and really look up to Chad Faulkner, who's our CEO. We were living in Southern California at the time. Chad was actually lived in Malibu, and I was working in Westlake Village. So in Southern California, there's a lot of options for training. There's a lot of options for different, things to do in the area. And a big part of meeting Chad was he was searching for a solution for his kids. And his kids were in the middle school, high school journey. And he basically came upon the facility that I was working at, and we had used a outside turf facility at the local high school that his kids were at. And so he saw us kind of training some NFL athletes and was like, wow, in his head, as he tells the story, he was like, wow, I really want the same type of training that those athletes are getting for my kids. And so he kind of basically found myself and found our company and came back and said, hey, how can I get my kids into this training? And so that kind of started this whole, I'll call it a year and a half to a year, almost 2 years of me working with his kids. First his son, then his daughter, and then his wife wanted to kind of get involved, and then eventually himself. And he really was impressed by just the way that training had developed over the years. He played football at Kansas State. He was an offensive lineman. underneath Coach Snyder. So had really good coaching, was really exposed to great trainers, and really that kind of inspired him to say, hey, how could we create the same experience and like democratize it for like all athletes of all ages and all abilities? And so that's kind of where it all started, you know, really over a cup of coffee and Chad with like a really good, robust idea.
Wow, that's cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay, so how did it turn into what it is now? Because it's huge.
Yeah, so we're in a couple different states. So we have a couple different campuses in Southern California. So our HQ, as we call it, is in Thousand Oaks. That's where Sports Academy was founded, in Thousand Oaks, California, Ventura County. And then we're actually expanding to Orange County area in about 30 days or so.
Oh, really?
So opening up a second campus in Seal Beach, California. So, and then we moved out to Texas in 2019. So, and we have 3 different locations here now.
And you run the one in Texas, right?
Yeah, so my role with Sports Academy, as it's developed through the years, Chad really sat me down and said, hey, you know, I think you could really help us grow the training side, the sport performance, because that was like my classical background and that was what I had done. And so I was like, hey, you know, kid in my 20s, I was like, man, like, you know, awesome, sure. Thought about it for a little bit and then was like, I'm all in.
Yeah.
And then just been running ever since.
Did you guys picture what it is now when you originally started it, or did it just kind of evolve into?
Yeah, I'd say coming up this year in 2025, it'll be a decade, you know, that since we started Sports Academy. And it seems like it really happened overnight, but the reality was it was a journey of a lot of really dedicated people with Chad at the helm of providing a vision and a why behind what Sports Academy meant to him and how he wanted to influence people from, you know, the household perspective all the way up through the professional athlete.
Yeah, I love that. I feel like when you walk in there, there's like a place for everyone, but it's also so focused, and like what I appreciate about it is I go and I work out and I feel accomplished and I feel like I've bettered myself in my sport. And when I go to the gym, it's like a lot of times people are just there to hang out and to meet people, and like it's not as, you know, that environment where maybe you're training aside professional athletes and you see them just perfecting their craft and it like motivates you. Yeah. So I love that about Sports Academy, and you guys also have a huge kids program. And I know you have like a passion for building up the youth, and we've talked about that with dancers, but there's also like tons of basketball kids, and you guys do a lot. And you also, don't you partner with hospitals, or what was?
Yeah, we work very closely in kind of that evidence-based practice world. So we work with sports medicine clinics, you know, from small private practice clinics all the way up to bigger health system organizations that you would see here in Texas or even in Southern California. So we've worked with the likes of Baylor Scott and White out here, as well as, you know, on the West Coast, different surgeons and orthopedic groups out there as well. So, you know, we create value in the fact that we complete the continuum of athlete care once a person goes through that surgery process and then has to figure out how they eventually get back to normal.
Right. Yeah, because there's like the physical therapy side and then the maintaining it side. Yeah. And Sports Academy and Baylor Scott and White has helped me so much because I had a broken back going from college. And so I had a really great therapist, PT over at Baylor Scott and White, who kind of got me started on everything. And then in the midst of that, have been continuing to train with Morgan on Sports Academy side. And I have not had any problems. I feel like just my body as a whole feels better. I'm so grateful. I love that place.
No, it's awesome. And that's ultimately part of the purpose with, you know, and Chad's vision with starting Sports Academy, and really where we're at right now is we don't claim to have all the answers. There's a lot of experts in the field at multiple different disciplines, but ultimately, where do we fit in? How do we complement whatever someone needs at that time of their life? And for us, we're not going to go step into a PT role because that's Jess, right? That's what she does. And ultimately, how do we complete that circle? How do we complete that continuum of care? Maybe it's nutritional resources, maybe it's training resources, manual therapy, sports massage. Maybe it's just providing an environment where you feel like it's comfortable. You like the people there. And I think that speaks to like our culture at Sports Academy. And we've always preach that, and I think that's been a big thing for us, is like it's not just about knowing how to write a program or knowing how to like teach people how to squat. But when you come here, you feel like you're a part of something. You can't put your finger on it. And I think ultimately that's what we wanted to create, like a community.
Yeah, I think that's so true. And I do live there pretty much.
Yeah, you do.
I do love it.
Yeah.
We would just come and hang out in the recovery room and talk with all the trainers. But it is true. Like there is that unspoken thing that just keeps you coming back. And one thing that I have kind of touched on, but like we'll reiterate, is just the value that I have felt as a dancer walking into that place. I feel like in other areas and years of my life, like it wasn't as appreciated that you're a dancer and an athlete, and that it, you need the same care that like another, football player needs, or a gymnast or whatever. But when I started training with you, because Jensen got me in with you guys, I don't know, was that Jensen. Was that like 2 years ago?
Feels like it was like.
It feels like a long time ago, but that was something that I really valued, just because dancers aren't always taken super seriously, and you showed a really big interest in the dance side of the sports world. And so I love that. Will you speak a little bit to just like what you think the importance of it is? Yeah,
I think the importance of it is like, for me, it comes back to like the human. And if you don't have a solution that matches up with the person that you're working with, and that can go all the way from the exercises that they prefer to do and not prefer to do, and it really gets into the psychology of the athlete that you work with, which is a big focus for me personally. And honestly, my journey as an individual with Sports Academy, that's actually a big emphasis of my like academic focus. And that's what my thesis is on for my master's. And then I actually just got it accepted to my PhD program, which starts next year. So,
awesome. Congrats.
The focus there for me is looking at the socio-psychological landscape of athlete anxiety. Because that to me is like one of the biggest underlining variables in human performance.
Yeah. So what do you think that you notice the most with athletes, like that they lack maybe in their performance as a whole, or mentally, physically, kind of the whole circle?
Yeah. When it comes to, I think my perspective and opinion in the dance world is that it's not that it's a bad thing and stay away from training. It's the fact that it's not the norm, right? It's a kind of a shut up and push through. It's a you're good, you'll be fine. You don't need to do that. We've never done that. Don't do that anyways. Dancing is enough. You get the training base from dancing or movement, or, and that extends through every single cheer and dance athlete that I've ever spoken to.
Yeah.
And it's almost this environment of like, if you don't do it, great, it doesn't matter, you don't need it. But to me, when I started seeing like some of the continuing effects of like meeting you and others that experience like, and kind of stated like they had back pain, or they had knees, or they had ankles, and it was like a continuing thing. It was like, man, like, is this okay? Like that it's like this, or should we figure out ways to kind of have different experts work with the continuum of people that already service you as a professional, and how do we make it better?
Yeah.
How do we get to the root cause and fix it?
Yeah, that's so true. And I've spoken to this on my podcast with Morgan, but like dancers traditionally don't have the best resources when it comes to just like having trainers around, or having good facilities to practice in. And that was one reason I got hurt, is because we're toe touching and jumping on concrete, and my back was taking the brunt of it. And we don't have trainers around, but we had to use whatever facility was like there that day. So I do think there's just a lack of care in general, because it's not looked at as a sport necessarily. It's almost like an accessory to the sport, or in some cases, like at some schools, it's a part of the band. Like you just fit in the entertainment side of it. So they don't yeah, like injuries and things are just kind of like you push through it, you just figure it out on your own. And that was something when I started training with you guys that I really liked, is just training for injury prevention. Because normally you're like, you just do what you do. And then if you get hurt, you're like, crap, like we got to figure it out. But I liked that we focused on like the injury prevention side of the sport. And I do think it really like has helped me, and I've stayed healthy.
No, that's good. And I think there's to me, injury prevention, that vernacular, you can never really fully prevent injuries, but I think I like to use the phrase of like, risk mitigation or injury mitigation. How do we make you more resilient to go out and compete? Or how do we make you to go resilient to go out and like step onto the field or step onto the concrete or whatever and do what you need to do as an athlete? Yeah. If we can check those boxes, then ultimately we've contributed to what we need to do as professionals. Yeah. And so I think that's ultimately what we try to do, is just educate and provide those resources. And ultimately, like you said, if there isn't enough resources, great, but people that are able to not only share that and learn from it, that's where we want to be. We want to be kind of truth tellers in that regard. Yeah. So. And I think as a dancer, like finally viewing myself as an athlete was a game changer, because for our sport, it's also a matter of being aesthetically fitting a role. And so it's a little bit more pressure to look a certain way and train almost, or in some cases people don't want to train because they think that's gonna like bulk them up or whatever. They're not fueling themselves properly because there's an expectation that you look a certain way. And that is something like pretty much every dancer has probably struggled with. But when I really started diving with you guys, I feel like I changed my mindset of, okay, I need to look at myself as an athlete and getting stronger and fueling myself better and like, improving my quality of life and being able to withstand crazy schedules and dancing every single night. It takes like building up strength and endurance and, to prepare your body so it's not shocked for those kinds of things. So I do think it really helped me mentally too, of just like recognizing my value as an athlete and what that means practically and stuff. Right. Yeah. Really good. No, completely agree. It's a mindset. It has to be. And ultimately when you make that switch, and that's ultimately what I told Jensen, that's what I told really everyone that kind of came over in the first, I'll call it the first wave of people that came over.
The OGs.
Is really just understanding that, you are an athlete. You do things that normal people do not do, and it's repetitive and it's all the time, and it's power and it's conditioning. And, you go through these different things where it's like, man, like, well, at the root of all of that, it's human movement. So if you don't feel like you're getting enough pop on your left leg, well, that means something. Now let's just like reverse engineer it back down to like human movement. What are the muscles involved? What are the functions? Is your ankle a little limited? What can we do to kind of address some of those things that you might feel anecdotally? And then how do we go and prescribe like a plan? How do we put together something that you can see that's like objective over time? And ultimately, I've found, just in my experience, is that consistency wins the day. Yeah. It doesn't have to be these like massive interventions where it's like, lose 20 pounds in 3 weeks. Yeah. Like figure out how you change your whole life. It's like, just keep showing up. Just show up. And if you show up over time and you have an intentional goal that you're working towards, 9 times out of 10, you're doing more than not at that point.
Yeah, and you want to show up at Sports Academy because you got good people around. And what do you guys see as like your future goals for Sports Academy, and what like is your mission kind of behind it going forward?
Yeah, I think for Sports Academy specifically, we've reached a point in our company's journey where we're looking to make the biggest impact possible on athletes of all ages and all abilities. So to me, is that super narrow of like, we're going to go open this many facilities every year and try to, or is it, I don't know if we have the answers to that yet, but I know where our CEO Chad's vision is to specifically do that. How do we make the most impact while we're here? And how do we give back to the communities that don't have the access, don't have the systems, technology, people, information? How do we create access, to kids? How do we create access to parents? And a lot of the times it just comes down to lack of knowledge. These parents are not giving their kids access because they don't know. It's because they don't know. And then when they know, they don't really know who to choose or why. So the biggest thing that we want to do is make an impact on the families that ultimately are, driving around in a van, with a bunch of kids trying to figure out how, and, ultimately injury is the worst thing. Kids quit sports because of injuries.
Right.
And so how do we get out in front of that? How do we make as much impact as possible?
Yeah, and it's cool to think about it starting with like his family, Chad's family,
Correct.
and their need, and now like that's the need you're filling within a bigger community and kind of all around the U.S.
Right.
Maybe expand internationally. Who knows?
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, I just got back from Rochester, Minnesota.
Wow.
Never thought I would ever go to Rochester, Minnesota, but
very nice.
We did. So there's opportunities everywhere. We're definitely excited about it all.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I'm super appreciative of everything Sports Academy has done for me, and I hope that like we can encourage a lot of dancers and just everyone in general, athletes, young or old, to just kind of put importance and an emphasis on the training and the quality of it. And I know for a lot of the DCC girls, they've been like drinking the Kool-Aid and they're coming in and they're like, okay, I do really like this. I'm like, I told you guys, I'm coming here for a while now. But I'm excited to see it grow, and hopefully we can do a lot within the dance world together. I think there's a lot to be done there, a lot of work needed. So maybe we can just change the dance world together.
100%, yeah. And I feel like it's already happening just with what we've started. And then, we've recently, since that time that we've been able to partner with Cheer and Dance Athletics, which has been one of the biggest groups in the world, really, for that. And we're actively working with them in Plano, Texas at their new complex, which we service over 1,000 of the Cheer and Dance athletes that go to that community, which never had access to it before.
Right, and you guys have a gym within their gym.
Correct. Yeah. So Sports Academy is inside and partnered directly with Cheer Athletics. So all the 1,000 dancers that go there, that are from stunt and pom and all the terms that I've learned, they all exist in that ecosystem to do their skill, but now they have access to performance training and recovery and rehabilitation. And it's just totally changed the game. Yeah,
I was going to ask about recovery because I feel like that is like my favorite thing ever now.
Yeah, 100%. And that's where we give a lot of credit back to our partners, Elevate Health. They're huge in the game right now. They've done a great job of working with us in our ecosystems, developing our recovery centers. But you have to have all of it in this day and age.
You do. I'm learning the importance of sleep and rest and red light. I'm kind of obsessed with red light.
Yeah, that's good. Red light.
Yes, but thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
I know I could pick your brain all day. You've got like the best business mind, and we could probably just like spend 2 hours talking about business ideas on here, but we'll save that for another time. But I hope you guys liked learning about Nate and just his journey with Sports Academy. It's a very special place, so make sure you check it out. And thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, notification bell, so you don't miss an episode. We're also on Spotify and YouTube and Apple Podcasts, so just follow us. And thank you guys for listening.